The beam from my flashlight hit plain concrete, and the floor opened. Not with a hatch, not with a seam, just a clean rectangle of darkness where there hadn't been anything a second earlier. We were U.S. Rangers running a quiet sweep in the Cascade Range, 1999. The site above us was supposed to be empty. A decommissioned structure, no power, no personnel, no access points on the drawings. Yet the light showed a stairwell cut straight down, steps dropping into a no-light that swallowed the beam after 3 or 4 risers. Dust and small grit drifted off the edge like it had been disturbed recently. I leaned closer, and the air coming up was colder than the room, steady, like a draft through a sealed pipe. My partner shifted to cover the corridor behind us, then froze. "Where's our entry?" he asked. I looked back. The return path was gone. This channel documents frontline accounts like this one. Subscribe for future reports. Our orders were simple. Confirm the condition of a mothballed federal facility tied to a former test range contract. Nothing sensitive on paper, nothing that justified a full security element. 2 rangers, 1 radio, a scheduled check-in window. We staged off a Forest Service road, hiked in under low cloud, and entered through a service door that should have led to a straight corridor and a maintenance bay. Inside, everything felt stripped to minimum. Bare concrete, conduit runs, old mounting plates on the walls, no signage, no placards, no soot, no water damage, just a clean, dry interior that didn't match a place left to rot. Our radio traffic was normal at first. Time hacks, grid references, all clear. Then our compass started to lag. Slow, hesitant swings like it was moving through syrup. The air grew noticeably cooler the deeper we went, and the building stopped echoing our steps. That was when the flashlight found the invisible stairwell. We treated it like a concealed access at first. I got on the radio and gave our position and the anomaly in plain terms. Possible subsurface stairwell not reflected on site drawings. No drama, just a data point. The reply came back clipped and delayed, like someone was holding the transmit a fraction too long before releasing it. The voice on the other end was familiar, Unit Watch Officer, but the cadence felt wrong. He told us to continue the sweep, verify and report, and to maintain our check-in schedule. My partner, Ruiz, stayed on rear security while I tested the edges of the opening. I swept the beam across the floor around it, looking for a seam line, a hatch lip, anything that would explain a concealed door. There wasn't one. The concrete around the rectangle was continuous, unbroken, like the stairwell entrance had been cut into the slab without leaving a cut. I took a knee and ran a gloved hand along the rim. It felt like the top edge of a poured stairwell, sharp, clean, and cold. I dropped a small pebble from the floor into the void and listened. There was no immediate impact sound, no sharp ping, no echo. After a few seconds, a dull thud arrived, soft enough that it could have been from anywhere. Ruiz glanced at me like he'd heard it too and didn't like what it implied. Then he pointed back over my shoulder. The corridor we'd used to come in was no longer there. Not hard to see, not shadowed, gone. In its place was a flat wall of the same concrete finish as everything else. No doorframe, no scuff marks, no line where new material met old. It looked like it had always been a dead end. We both stood still and let our brains catch up. I walked up to the wall and pressed my palm against it. Solid, cold, no vibration. I dragged the flashlight beam along it, hunting for any imperfection that would betray a false panel. Nothing. Ruiz tried the radio again. This time, only a hiss and a faint rhythmic tick came through like a metronome buried under static. He cycled channels, checked the battery, reseated the handset. Same tick. I could hear my own breathing inside my mask and the faint whisper of air rising from the stairwell. We went back to fundamentals. I marked our current location with a strip of tape on the floor and a grease pencil arrow pointing toward the wall that used to be our corridor. The arrow looked absurd, pointing into a dead end. Ruiz did the same near the stairwell rim. A simple X, so we could verify whether anything was shifting in ways we couldn't track. We had 2 immediate options: search for another exit in the facility, or go down the stairs that shouldn't exist. Either way, we needed to maintain accountability. I set a timer for our next check-in and kept the radio keyed long enough to send an open carrier, an old trick to see if anything breaks through on the other end. The static tick persisted, steady and patient. The facility itself started behaving wrong as we moved. Sound didn't carry normally. Our boots hit concrete, but the slap of each step felt muffled, as if the room was padded. When I spoke at a normal level, my words sounded close to my face, like the air was absorbing them. We swept adjoining rooms and short connector hallways. The architecture repeated: blank walls, missing signage, hardware scars where equipment used to be, but every door we opened led to spaces that felt too clean, too consistent, like a replica of utility rooms built by someone who'd seen photographs but never worked inside one. Twice we backtracked to the stairwell to confirm it was still there. Both times it was. Both times, the grease pencil marks were unchanged. On the third return, the tape arrow I'd placed near the dead-end wall was gone. Not peeled, not moved, gone. The floor beneath it was the same uniform gray as the rest. No residue, no torn edge. Ruiz stared at the spot for a long second, and then looked at me without speaking. He didn't have to. The building was editing our evidence. We tightened the loop. I cut a second strip of tape and placed it 1/2 meter from the first mark, then made a small notch in the concrete dust with the tip of my knife, something you can't remove without disturbing the surface. Ruiz took a knee, watched me do it, and then took a photo on his handheld for a timestamp reference. The flash didn't brighten the room the way it should have. It looked like the light died early, swallowed by the same dullness that was killing the sound. At the stairwell, we tried a different test. I held the flashlight just above the rim and angled it downward. The beam reached 3, maybe 4 steps, and then faded into a textured dark. No hard line, no pure black, just a heavy gray that looked thick. Dust particles drifted down through it, visible for a moment before they vanished. I dropped the glow stick. It fell, dimmed rapidly, and then became a pinprick before disappearing entirely. No impact, no rolling, no bounce. Ruiz's voice was low. "That's not just dark." I nodded. We were past the point where unmapped access explained anything. The entrance itself had been invisible until the beam found it, and now the building had removed our way back without leaving a trace. If we stayed topside, we were trapped inside a layout that could rewrite itself. If we went down, we were committing to a space we couldn't light and couldn't measure. My timer buzzed for the check-in window. I keyed the radio and spoke slowly, clearly, using our call sign and the time hack. No answer. Only the tick, steady, mechanical, like something in the walls was counting down with us. I looked at Ruiz, then back at the stairwell rim. "Rope first," I said, and we started preparing to descend. We rigged a short rope off a pipe bracket that looked original to the structure. Old bolt holes, old weld marks, something that felt real compared to the rest of the place. Ruiz went first, slow and controlled, one boot finding the first step that my light barely outlined. I followed, keeping the beam tight and low, trying to read the geometry before it disappeared. The first 4 steps were normal: concrete, squared edges, faint grit underfoot. Then the light started dying like it was losing traction, not dimming, failing. The cone shortened, the air in it turned grainy with dust, and everything below a certain depth became the same thick gray-black. We kept moving anyway, counting steps under our breath to maintain spacing. At 10 steps down, the radio hiss changed. The steady tick tightened into a faster cadence like a relay switching states. Ruiz stopped and raised his hand. He wasn't looking down. He was looking back up. Above us, the opening we'd come through should have been a hard rectangle of lighter gray, our last reference point. Instead, it looked like a flat slab again. The stairwell mouth was still there in my peripheral. I could feel the drop, but the visual was wrong, like our angle no longer matched what the room was showing. I aimed my flashlight up. The beam hit floor where there should have been air. Dust fell through it anyway. Ruiz exhaled once, sharp. "It's hiding." We pushed down another 3 steps, because staying between 2 impossible options felt worse than committing to one. My left hand found the handrail. Cold metal, damp film, Then a sudden section where the rail wasn't metal at all. Smooth and matte, like it had been sleeved in something that didn't belong in a utility stairwell. I froze. Ruiz felt it too and pulled his hand back like the surface had stolen heat. Then the stairwell spoke. Not a voice. A pressure change. A low vibration that didn't travel through air the way sound does. It traveled through structure, up the rail, into our gloves, into our teeth. The dust, suspended in my beam, started to drift sideways, as if the space was breathing out through the steps. My light caught movement, just a shift in the darkness at head height, deeper than the beam should reach. No shape I could describe cleanly, just the sense of something occupying the volume between us and the next landing. Ruiz raised his rifle, but he didn't fire. Neither did I. The tick on the radio stopped, and in the sudden quiet, a different sound came from below. Slow, deliberate contact on concrete, like claws or nails testing each step without committing weight. We backed up one step at a time, keeping the beam trained, waiting for the moment the invisible would decide to become physical. We didn't run. We couldn't afford noise, and we couldn't afford to lose the count of steps. Ruiz kept his muzzle low and ready. I kept the light anchored on the edge where the darkness had shifted. One step up, 2, 3. The rail stayed cold until it didn't, until that smooth section returned under my palm and the vibration came back, faint but deliberate, like a warning. At 8 steps, the air changed again. The draft reversed for a moment. Downward, pulling at the dust in my beam. Ruiz whispered, "Up, now!" And we moved faster, controlled but urgent. When we reached what should have been the top, my flashlight hit floor again, solid gray where the opening was supposed to be. I shoved the beam across it, searching for the rim. Nothing. The stairwell entrance had gone invisible from the inside. We were sealed in. I keyed the radio, switched to emergency, then to the lowest power channel. The hiss returned, but the tick was gone. In its place was a single tone that rose and fell like someone dragging a finger over a glass rim. Mechanical, precise, repeating every few seconds. Ruiz tried his handset. Same tone. We were broadcasting, but something else had taken over the frequency. We went to work with what we had. I cut another notch into the step with my knife and watched the dust shift. Ruiz fixed chem lights to the rail to mark our position. The green was dim, swallowed fast, and the marks looked wrong the moment we turned away, as if the stairwell refused to hold on to evidence. The pressure vibration returned, stronger. The dust in my beam moved sideways again. Below us, that slow contact resumed on concrete. Step, pause, step, measuring distance. Ruiz's breathing got shallow. Mine did too. We didn't speak after that. Talking made it feel closer. When the facility finally gave us an exit, it wasn't back the way we came. A service door we hadn't seen before appeared at the top landing with a dead push bar and no labels, like the building decided we were allowed out. We stepped into daylight hours later than we should have. The sky over the Cascade Range looked unchanged. Our watches were not. And the first thing that came through on the radio, clean, clear, was a calm voice ordering us to return to staging and say nothing about the stairwell. Back at staging, the debrief wasn't a debrief. It was a checklist. Times, grids, what we could prove. The moment I said invisible stairwell, the officer across the table stopped writing and slid a pre-printed form forward. Non-disclosure language already filled in, signature blocks waiting. Our handheld photos were blank gray frames. The tape and notches we described couldn't be verified. The facility, they told us, had no sublevels and no recorded modifications after decommissioning. Cascade Range 1999 went into a sealed file marked Structural Anomaly, Unconfirmed. Ruiz transferred units within a month. I stayed quiet, but I still remember the dust falling through a floor that wasn't there, and the sound of steps testing concrete in the dark.